Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Footy Daily. This is Larry Henry Jr. from SBI with you. Glad to have you back for week number 2 of the show. And I got a special guest with me for the second episode. I got Mr. Worldwide, as I like to call him, because he's literally everywhere. Joe Lowery with Backheeled, ESPN, The Guardian, The Athletic, MLS, Phoenix Rising. He does it all. Joe, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Yeah, Larry, first off, it's great to be here. I'm honored to be a guest on the show. And I don't know how Pitbull's going to feel for me coming for his nickname, but that is a battle that I'm willing to fight.
Now you just got to move to Dade County, man. You got to get out of Phoenix and head to Florida.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. All right, he can have it. He can have it.
I don't know what's hot. What's hotter at this point, Florida or Arizona? Probably Arizona, right?
Yeah, we're not so sticky out here, but we are hotter. So you just got to pick your poison, man.
Yeah, great. But good to have you, man. Glad to see you again. Obviously, I probably haven't seen you since MLS Cup
Yeah.
in Columbus. I was about to say LA because it was, my mind's a blur half the time,
Oh,
but that was 2 years ago and that last year. But who knows? It might be in either one of those places again this December. We'll see. It very well could end up that way.
yeah. I'm thinking we talked about Florida. I'm thinking that's also an option down in Miami as well. So we'll see. Selfishly out here in Phoenix, I'll take LA of any of those other travel options, especially in December, maybe over Columbus. But yeah, man, it's tons of fun covering the sport, covering MLS, all that jazz.
Nice, man. Well, we'll get right into it. Obviously, everybody listening, make sure you follow the show on Spotify, the Footy Daily. Follow Joe on Twitter or X or whatever you call it nowadays, at Joe C Lowry, and then follow me at Larry Henry at L Henry 019. So jumping right into it, Joe. Obviously, a new European season is upon us. We have a lot of American players to keep an eye on. Obviously, I know MLS and Leagues Cup and everything going on. So far, a couple weeks into the season, I know it hasn't been a lot to really take in, but
Sure.
has there any been a player so far, or a couple players that maybe have caught your eye so far in the early stages of the European season?
There are lots of players that I am intrigued by this year because this especially now with Mauricio Pochettino coming in to coach the U.S. men's national team, that deal is not officially done. I don't believe last time I checked in on the situation that it's been contracts have been signed or anything like that, but things are real close. And Pochettino, barring some absurd catastrophe at this point, will be the USMNT manager, which I think really opens the door, Larry, for potentially a number of different guys and sort of resets a lot of things coming into a new era with a new manager who doesn't have the same ties to some previous players that we would see get big minutes. So one player that I'm intrigued about, and I don't know if he's a great fit for Pacha's system, but somebody who I think is a fascinating player on their own is Haji Wright, who I think could be one of those players who has something to gain from Pochettino, getting to see him play as a winger now, and now he's entering his first full season as a winger. Last year, sort of his first taste of that down in the championship. He's already scored goals this season in the championship. He could really improve even more in that role and grow more comfortable with it, especially cutting in on that right foot off the left side. And who knows, man, if he scores double digit goals over the next few months or something along those lines, he's already in and around the periphery of the U.S. men's national team. Maybe it becomes something more at a position, Larry, that I think really is a pain point right now for the U.S. I mean, who are the goal scoring wingers for the United States right now? Christian Pulisic's playing as a 10 for Fonseca and AC Milan. Gio Reyna's not playing. Tim Weah is injured already. Brendan Aronson isn't a starter. Kevin Paredes is injured. Like, there just aren't a lot of great options. And who knows, man? Maybe Haji Wright turns into a legit left winger who can contribute to the U.S.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Haji Wright is definitely a cool story because he's been, I think he's 26 now,
Yeah.
years old. He's been kind of a journeyman in the sense where we all kind of remember when he went to Schalke in the Bundesliga. Then he goes to Denmark, then he goes to Turkey. Now he's in England. Has a really great first season in the championship, which is a grueling division. 46 games, gets to an FA Cup semifinal, gets himself back into the national team. So I'm intrigued by Haji Wright. He's definitely, when he's kind of started, we saw him kind of as a straight out, center forward. Now we see him on the wing. I think it's definitely caused problems for defenders in the championship, and we've seen it with the national team as well. So I'm excited by that because by him, what he can bring to Coventry, who's going to try to be in the top six picture again in the championship. So definitely excited about Haji Wright. I think another guy that's maybe impressed me is maybe a guy that we haven't seen probably in the national team picture in a couple years, and that's Richie Ledesma. The PSV I guess attacker now turned right back. Which
Yeah.
I think is pretty interesting. In the final year of his contract at PSV, there were reports that maybe MLS teams were in the mix for him earlier in the summer. Now it looks like he's going to stay at PSV. Kind of a new lease on life now in Peter Bosz's squad. Maybe it's a guy we see back in the national team picture. I don't know. Obviously, Mexico could still be, maybe in the mix for him. But we'll see. I mean, I think it's cool to see, especially too. I mean, looking at the right back situation with the national team, obviously, with Joe Scally coming in over the summer, Serginho Dest still going to be out long term. There's definitely depth needed at that position. So that's another. Besides Haji Wright, I'd say Richie Ledesma is definitely impressed. Josh Sargent getting off to a good start is good to see. Anyone else on your radar, or just Haji Wright for now?
Yeah, I mean, these are less players that have been shining, although I guess one of them has been. But I'm fascinated to learn more about the number 6 spot for the U.S. moving forward, with Tyler Adams being out injured and him being out injured a lot, and that's been a key theme, unfortunately, throughout his career. And Pochettino coming in, maybe even preferring more of a double pivot, which would put less value on Tyler Adams' best asset, which is covering a bunch of ground, which is already, not exactly ideal for somebody who can't stay on the field and who struggles with injuries, and maybe that lessens that impact as well. But Johnny Cardoso, Aiden Morris, and Tanner Tessman, I think, are all players to watch at that spot this season. Morris is the one that really has been shining so far this season. Middlesbrough fans seem to love him. He's gone straight into Michael Carrick's starting 11 in the championship. Has started 3 games already for them, every possible opportunity. Johnny Cardoso has been coming off the bench, or at least he did in Betis's first game of the La Liga season. And Tanner Tessman's been at least temporarily frozen out at Venezia after all the transfer stuff that's been swirling around him. So we'll see what happens with Tessman. It does seem like he would benefit from a new home. But although those players are going to be guys that I'm watching closely as we get into the fall and beyond, because I can tell you with some level of certainty, Pochettino is going to be doing the exact same thing.
Right. And I think, Testament, it's funny you bring him up because my next question for you is looking at the summer transfer window in Europe. Obviously,
Yeah.
about a week or so left in the transfer window for at least the major leagues. I know kind of the minor European leagues kind of linger into September a little bit, but Testman's a guy that obviously has been in the media with a move from Venezia. So many Italian clubs in the mix for him. It doesn't seem like things are going to be working out this season for him at his current club. So I think a move is definite. Is he? I guess he's one of the guys
Yeah.
you would hope that makes a move before that deadline window shuts.
Yeah, he's absolutely on that list. Not the one that I think is most important in terms of a USMNT perspective, just because Testament is still more of a prospect than anything. But yeah, it would be a loss if he's not going somewhere where he's going to play. And who knows? Maybe that does turn out to be Venezia. I believe it was their sporting director came out and talked about how he's sort of been training on his own now because of everything that's been going on, and his mind's not really in it. Who knows exactly what of that is true and what of that is colored? But he also came out and said, if he doesn't find a new home, I think we can reevaluate. So I don't know that it's going to be a situation where if Tessman doesn't get out of Venezia, he's just stuck on the bench. It's not a good thing for him. It wouldn't really be a good thing for the club either. In terms of other players though that need a new home, Gio Reyna is the one that I'm most fascinated by. Guy is not clearly in the Nuri Sahin's preferred starting 11 for Borussia Dortmund. He didn't start their Pokal game last weekend. I would be very surprised if he starts this weekend for them in the Bundesliga. As that season gets kicked off, he needs somewhere where he can go and somewhere where he can play, and maybe that's a mid-table Bundesliga team. Maybe who knows, right? I care less about the specifics of exactly where the team is and more about, is he going to be in a system that allows him to play to his strengths? And maybe most importantly, is he going to be in a position to play? Because the Forest loan on paper looked okay last year, where really poor team in the Premier League, you're going down from a team that's making a deep run in the Champions League to that level. And it just didn't work. He didn't play and things didn't gel. So Gio Reyna is somebody I'm watching for. And then also thinking about a guy like Ricardo Pepi, who is still stuck behind Luke de Jong in that PSV forward depth chart. we're running into year 2 now of the exact same situation for Ricardo Pepi, where sure, he's productive. And if I'm PSV, I'm perfectly happy to have him kind of eating up some of those garbage time minutes and scoring goals. It worked out just fine for them last year winning a trophy. It's just not a great situation for the player. So I would be maybe a bit more surprised than not. This is just speculation. If Pepi is still a PSV player, at least in a permanent sense, I suppose, coming towards the end of this month and into September, I think he'll find a loan move of some sort soon.
Yeah, Pepe obviously is a good one because I mean going through in the summer, obviously he knew what was still in front of him in Luke De Jong. I believe it was like the second to last friendly, he had a hat trick. Everyone was kind of getting a little excited by that. But then you go into the leagues, the cup match, the league season. He's still on the bench. I believe he started for the second team. At PSV, which isn't really a good sign for who you hope to be as one of your maybe starting forwards for the national team, playing in Dutch second division games regularly. But yeah, hopefully you can get a move. Gio Reyna is another one, like you said. Tessman, we'll see what happens. I think one guy that obviously might need a move as well, and I haven't seen any reports today, and that's Matt Turner. What happens with him at
Yeah,
Nottingham
totally on
Forest?
the list.
Yeah, he needs to get some playing time. It was kind of like a couple, maybe the season before that, where Ethan Horvath was kind of stuck at Nottingham Forest. Now it's Matt Turner's turn that's stuck in the rotation. Especially if you want this guy to be your number one for the national team, he has to be playing. Right now, right now it's pretty funny when you look at the last couple weeks with the USMNT goalkeepers. And Gaga Slonina is probably the one that's kind of standing out the most. And where Matt Turner is not really playing, Ethan Horvath has a pretty bad week
Yeah.
against Burnley. So it'll be intriguing to see what happens. One guy I think that we probably could have brought on this list maybe a week or two ago is Weston McKennie. Now it looks like that's kind of shifted a little bit. It sounds like he is in talks to extend his stay at Juventus for another season. His current contract was set to expire at the end of this season. Was on the bench for the Serie A opener on Monday. I think definitely an important player for Thiago Motta. What do you think about McKennie? Obviously, possibly staying at Juventus rather than trying to find a move this late in the window.
Yeah, I don't feel particularly strongly one way or the other. It seems like Juventus and Weston McKennie have a weird on again, off again sort of relationship where the guy just can't quite quit Juve and Juve can't quite quit him either, regardless of who's in charge. We've gone from Pirlo to Allegri now to Mota. It's a bizarre situation. I think it's fine for him to be there. I think he will absolutely continue to be a part of this team if he sticks around. He always finds a way to get on the field because he can play in 11,000 different spots. At the same time, Weston McKennie going to find a new club and going to play, going to a place where he can be a number 8, which is his best spot, week in and week out, would be also super useful for his development. So that's why I sort of can see either way here. You stick at Juve, you get minutes, you continue to improve on the field, you continue to be a part of that team. I think that's a fine outcome. Or you go end up somewhere else, that also feels like a fine outcome. I imagine we're leaning more towards the first one right now, given some of the reporting.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think compared to years past, this transfer, the last week or and a half of the transfer window, it's going to be maybe a little bit more quiet than years past, where we see a lot of guys making loan moves, transfers. It seems like a lot of people are kind of set where they're at. But I do like a little bit of excitement the last day or two to see
Oh
what
yeah.
happens. So we'll see how it goes. But obviously we kind of hinted on the national team with obviously games coming up in September, friendlies against Canada and New Zealand. Hoping to be at least at the New Zealand match, but I know the Canada one definitely might have a little circle around it already with Jesse Marsh being involved. What are you hoping to see anything maybe from those two matches in terms of obviously we know Pochettino probably not going to be there for it. Mikey Varas going to take the interim for those unless something maybe drastically changes from now until then. Is there something that you're looking at in those two matches, or is it just kind of see maybe for position battles or how this team can kind of maybe respond after the poor Copa America?
It does depend a bit on whether Pochettino is there or not. I think there is a chance that he will be, maybe even a little bit more than you do. But it's still TBD, right? Like this process has taken longer, I think, than anybody would have wanted. But we'll see what happens there. So for the sake of this answer, I'll assume that Pochettino's not going to be there, right? And so we'll set aside some of the tactical things that I think we're going to see from him. I don't think we'll see a massive shift from what Berhalter's US looked like to what Pochettino's is going to look like. That's just not going to happen for this team. Pochettino's going to want them to play with the ball. Berhalter had some of those principles in place. He's going to want them to press. Berhalter had some of those principles in place. I do think we'll see tweaks, but I would frame it more as tweaks rather than as a systemic overhaul. But setting some of that stuff aside for now, I'm curious about the sixth spot. Tyler Adams will not be a part of that camp for the United States. Who plays a defensive midfield? Is it a single pivot? Is it a double pivot? Do we see Yunus Musa compete in the sixth conversation as he has in the past? Those guys that I mentioned earlier in the last question, like there are real possibilities to who's going to be in that spot for the United States. I don't think it's super clear whose minutes those are going to be come September. So that, to be honest, that is the thing. I mean, in addition to can Gio Reyna and Pulisic and whoever else is starting in the attack continue to find Gio Reyna? Continue to find Florin Balogun, because Balogun, I think, showed it during the Copa America. He showed it in his first couple of games of the U.S. in the Nations League a while now. He showed his quality, but we didn't quite see it with Monaco last season, not consistently enough anyway. He wasn't as productive as he would have wanted to be, and he would certainly tell you that. I want to see him continue to be integrated into this U.S. team, and maybe also to see who's going to be that other attacker. Is it Gio Reyna continuing to be in midfield with Pulisic on one wing? Is it still Tim Weah on the other? Not as a reaction to him lashing out against Panama and getting that red card, which dooms the U.S., but really more just as a realization that he hasn't been an effective attacking player for this U.S. team in quite some time, and is playing, or certainly did play last season as a wingback, and now he's also hurt with a leg injury after his season opener for Juve. So there are lots of different permutations in the attack as well. Who's eating up that other spot with Balogun and Pulisic locked in starters? It certainly seems to me. And then the sixth spot, those are, I think, really big and interesting questions for this team.
Yeah, it'll be definitely be interesting to see how it goes. Obviously, I think these matches, right? The results don't really matter too much. It's about getting these guys back acclimated into it after a couple months away. Of course you want to win. You don't want to have a 3-0, 4-0 loss over your head either. But overall, I think looking at what's going to happen, I think it's a good opportunity for them to get to play against two very different teams, right? Canada, New Zealand, two different kind of federations. Obviously, we seen that before from Berhalter. Hinted from Berhalter trying to get different opponents throughout the year. And this is just the start of it, because in October you have Panama, you have Mexico, then you have the Nations League starting back up in November, and that's where the competitive matches kind of start rolling in November. So definitely intrigued to see what happens over the next probably 3-4 weeks. See who we have in the mix, who maybe kind of boost their stock a little bit. Looking at the players, right? You hinted at a few for the September window. Is there anybody that you're kind of hoping to see in that window that maybe we wouldn't normally see? Or obviously, like you said, Tim Weah with the injury, Tyler Adams is hurt. You hinted at some guys at the six already. Are there certain guys that you hope that will be in that squad, or is it still kind of maybe up in the air a little bit because we still have a little bit of club action still to go?
I think there are lots of different options who could come in. A name that hasn't come up yet in our conversation that ties to the other attacking spot is Luca Koleosho, who is I think a 4-by national. He's a multinational, born in the United States. He is not committed to play for the U.S. He's been in camp with Canada. He's an Italy youth international. I would be a little surprised if we saw him in September, but would I like to see it? Absolutely. This guy was in the Premier League and doing some good things last year before an injury knocked him out for the second half of the season. I think he missed 24 games, had broken through previously at Espanyol, which was the club that Mauricio Pochettino started out his coaching career. Maybe some commonality there that Pochettino, as if his name wouldn't maybe be enough, but maybe would help sway Koleosho a bit more here if he's interested, in fact, in playing for the U.S. But seeing Koleosho commit to this U.S. program, I think would be one of the bigger storylines between now and the 2026 World Cup, because let's face it, the club situations for some of these U.S. players, as we've talked about, aren't ideal. And we haven't seen a lot of them take big steps forward since the 2022 World Cup. And that has put a pretty hard cap on how far this current group can go. if you want to go out there and get better, one way to do it is by having players improve in the current pool. Another way to do it, a simpler way to do it, is by finding more talent. And I think Koleosho would absolutely be in a 23 or a 26 man squad for the United States men's national team whenever he wants it. And maybe he's a guy who would want it in September. Again, I think it's probably going to be later on if it happens at all. But his name is one that I'm absolutely monitoring, and I think folks out there should be as well.
Yeah, I think Koleosho is definitely an exciting player. Like you said, showed some really good moments with Burnley before the injury. Has already scored this season in the championship against Ethan Horvath, nonetheless. In that win last weekend, it'll be intriguing to see if the U.S. can get him. Like you said, kind of so many kind of different teams in the mix for him. I've heard different reports, whether it's from sources, whether it's from other reports saying, oh, he's definitely going to be set on Italy. Then, you post that and you get so many people on Twitter like, well, the U.S. can offer him a World Cup in 2026. Italy can't offer him that right
Sure.
now because they haven't qualified. And who knows if they will. So I'm excited by him. I think he could definitely maybe push some of the players in the pool. It's definitely been a change, right? Because, 4 or 5 years ago, we were looking at so many guys that the U.S. were getting, right? Dual national players. I mean, Serginho Dest, Yunus Musa, Folarin Balogun. Now it's kind of like, okay, who's next in that group that they can get? And Koleosho is one of them. One guy I'm hoping maybe we see, and I don't know if we will. We saw him last fall with the national team, and that's Leonard Maloney, the midfielder from
Mhm.
Heidenheim. I think he's definitely really kind of taken the most of his opportunities at club level, right? I mean, 3 seasons ago, he was playing in the fourth division of Germany. Then he goes to Heidenheim in the two Bundesliga, helps them get promoted. They had a really great season last year, getting, qualifying for a Europe spot. He's definitely going to be in the mix again. He played 90 minutes in the cup over the weekend. Still a young player. I think still has room to grow. We saw him, like I said, last fall. Hopefully he doesn't get kind of maybe frozen out with the amount of midfielders that we have. But overall, I think it'd be another name in the mix. And again, if you're continuing to play high level Bundesliga soccer, then
Yep.
then I think then you definitely will get an opportunity. And like you said, Tyler Adams out right now. Knock on wood, nobody else gets hurt, but it's a long season. Things are going to happen. So maybe Leonard Maloney's a guy. Maybe we see in the September window, maybe the October window. We'll see. Now I wanted to flip it over, obviously, to MLS. Obviously, I know you do a lot with MLS. We both have represented well and covering MLS. But I want to look at MLS players, obviously, that have made the jump to Europe, right? I mean, we see it every year. Caleb Wiley, probably the most recent. Aiden Morris, American players that have made that move to Europe. Obviously, I know right now it's middle of the season, it's a little tough. But obviously, by the end of the year, we're probably going to see some names make that move. I know Tom Bogert with John Tolkien references recently. Duncan McGuire obviously has been in the mix before. I know new contract might change things, but what players do you think we'll see from MLS make that move to Europe? Maybe by the end of this year or the start of next year.
Yeah, I think we'll see a handful at minimum go over to Europe. You mentioned John Tolkien; he's absolutely somebody that comes to mind very very quickly with this kind of thing. To stick over in the Eastern Conference at first, this is kind of cheating because we know there's already real interest here. Diego Gomez going to Brighton. There's been tons of reporting surrounding that. The Inter Miami Paraguayan international young player was brought in right after Messi signs last year, along with Thomas Aviles and Facundo Farias, and Farias goes down injured before the season actually starts, and then they bring in Redondo from Argentina as well. Like all of these guys could be headed to Europe within the next 18 months. I think Gomez is pretty clearly going to be the first one to go and actually experience that. He's a talented box to box center mid, somebody who a lot of scouts from a lot of different countries have enjoyed quite a lot. Not a perfect player, still can improve his touch and some of those things, but somebody certainly worth watching. Another South American, Facundo Torres, who's a number 10 winger type, much better in the half spaces really than playing either extreme. He's somebody who I've not been crazy high on at times for Orlando, but has really turned it on over the last couple of months of the season, and who's had European interest before. Some of that Orlando are super high on. They liked him a lot, obviously, to bring him in the first place. somebody who's been on the fringes of the Uruguayan national team that helps your profile in situations like this. Orlando need a bit of a refresh, and I think moving on from Torres could be a good way for them to do that. Whether that's this summer or in the winter or in the following summer, I don't know, but I do think Torres is a real contender to make a move. There, I believe Tom maybe or somebody else, I don't remember who it was, had reported that there was a real offer for him already this window that Orlando had rejected. So the wheels are spinning there in one way or another. Another name on my list, a U.S. youth international, was at the Olympics, Jack McGlynn. There's a lot of buzz around him right now. Maybe we see a move that takes McGlynn out of the Philly equation in the next couple of weeks, or maybe more likely we see a deal agreed now or in the winter that sees him go in the winter, and he goes to the Eredivisie or to Belgium or to a sort of a mid-table Bundesliga team. I would love to see McGlynn sort of in the same mold as Caleb Wiley go and find a new challenge, just because I think he's a super talented player, but I don't think we've really seen him improve a ton with Philly over the last calendar year or so. It was Caleb Wiley in Atlanta, good player, starter, guaranteed, kind of solid player for Atlanta, but never seemed to turn into anything more than that. McGlynn has a very, very similar set of experiences right now, at least as far as my eyes can tell me. I would like to see him go and find that next chapter. I mean, tons of other guys I think that could be in this conversation, but those are some of the ones that jump out to me first.
Yeah, I'm sticking with McGlynn, obviously being from the East Coast, watching kind of his development with Philly, and obviously in the national team kind of youth fold. I mean, it's really something special, right? We've seen it happen in the Philly Academy before. I mean, the list goes on. Mark McKenzie, Brendan Aronson, Austin Trusty, so many guys that have made the move. Paxton Aronson. Kevin Sullivan will be there in a few years. Maybe Quinn Sullivan. So I think McGlynn's definitely one I think that would deserve a move. Really good left foot, really good passer. I mean, Jim Curtin's obviously said it before about his IQ being really high for his age. Really hoping we see this kid in the national team fold with
Yeah.
the senior team. I think he could definitely, really be a star, if given the chance. So really excited for that. The other guys you mentioned too, Facundo Torres, I think at some point is going to make that move back, from MLS where we don't know, but I think, could definitely help a lot of teams. He's been such a key guy for Orlando City. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see over the next couple months. And then obviously, we still have the tail end of the MLS season, MLS
Yeah,
Cup playoffs. So many guys can kind of, earn their move in those
totally.
months. You deliver a great playoff run, help your team to a title. I mean, that could just get you a move right then and there. So,
Yeah.
it'll
Can I
be
toss,
interesting.
Larry? Can I toss two more names into
Yeah.
this whole equation very, very quickly? Two guys, both for LAFC, Mateus Bogus and Cristiano Oliveira. Both guys that have had reporting around them in this summer window. Would not surprise. It would surprise me a bit if both found a deal, but it wouldn't surprise me if one of them does. It's so interesting to me with LAFC because they've done a fantastic job of succession planning. It's going to hurt to lose one or both of those guys, but a player that hasn't been talked about a ton this season, and for good reason, is David Martinez, who they brought in 17 years old when they signed him from South America, Venezuelan, one of the top talents coming out of Venezuela, super highly regarded. And you watch this tape, this guy's unbelievably good. Like, give him one more season where he's not going to have to play a huge role for the rest of this year. He's 18 now. You come into the next year, and he's going to be a real contributor to a team that is, again, going to be one of the best players in the league. So, again, David Martinez, go just keep an eye on him. He's going to be something special. And LAFC have done a really good job of equipping themselves to both be a part of the transfer market now with young players that they've signed and developed, like Oliveira and Bogusz, and then also working towards the next window and the one after that with someone like David Martinez.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all those guys you said, I think all deserving of a move, could get that move by the end of the year. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens over the next few months. We obviously know where to go. Tom Bogert's going to have all of it for us in
No
the
doubt.
next few weeks, for sure. And then obviously, we touched on it. MLS. Obviously we still have Leagues Cup coming up tonight, with the semifinals. Philadelphia and Columbus squaring off, and then you have LAFC in Colorado. Before I get your predictions on the remainder of the MLS season, who gets to the Leagues Cup final, and who wins it?
Yeah, I've got LAFC and Columbus going in, both certainly favorites in the semifinals. I would lean towards Columbus winning this whole thing. We saw what they did to LAFC in MLS Cup last year. We saw what they did to LAFC in LAFC's building earlier this year, winning that game 5-1. LAFC are very good, and they've gotten better, certainly by adding Lewis O'Brien and Olivier Giroud, more importantly, to their team. They've gotten better at a distance that is far larger than the distance that the Crew have gotten better in the summer window. They're stronger now relative to where they were before. Maybe that's an easier way to say it than Columbus are relative to where they were before. So I think that gap has narrowed, and Giroud will change games for this team. At the same time, Columbus with how they played and the success and the comfort that they're going to have playing against LAFC, yeah, I still tilt things in their favor. But man, these are four solid teams. Colorado have been a great story this year, sitting fourth in the Western Conference. I had a chance to talk to Chris Armas for Backheeled and sort of really just dive into his personal transformation as a manager and what's helping to fuel this team's run. They just sold Moise Bombito for a record fee for a center back going out of MLS for $7+ million. A great bit of business there, but it does make them weaker. So how does that change things? And then Philly have rebounded. They were the longest undefeated team in MLS play to start the season. And then all of a sudden they were way down towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And now they are bouncing back up in the East and in Leagues Cup. They're a good team too. I mean, this could go any way, but I think it's going to go Columbus's way.
Yeah, I think like you said, it can go any way. I think for the teams that we mentioned, obviously LAFC, Columbus Crew, in MLS Cup last season, you expect them to be among the contenders again this year. Colorado's been a great story. I mean, some of the all-season signings that they made, a few Americans as well, Mihailovic, Zach Steffen, Sam Vines, coming back. The Bombito move, I'm intrigued to see how they kind of fill that role. But overall, I think tonight's going to be two really good matches. I'm with you. Same thing. Columbus, LAFC. I think the Union have been really well. They've been at home for most of the tournament. But overall, I think it's going to be really two really good matches. And like you said, it could go either way. And then obviously looking at MLS, we still have a long, not a long way to go, but still a decent way to go in the regular season. I mean, looking at the standings, right? Inter Miami leading the East. 53 points. LA Galaxy, maybe, surprisingly ahead of LAFC with 49 points. Probably not many people expected the Galaxy to be top of the West right now. Obviously, so much kind of drama surrounding the club each season. Overall, just your thoughts, quickly on MLS and how you could see it shaking in both conferences.
It's been an awesome season. Like this has been one of the better seasons that I've covered, maybe the best one that I've covered in terms of the top end quality. The Galaxy, LAFC, RSL are all legit trophy threats out of the Western Conference, although I think RSL stock took a hit in this particular window with them moving Andres Gomez for an 8-figure deal to Liga. It's a huge move for them, and I don't think you can stand in the way of the player there, but still difficult nonetheless. They brought in a DP and made some strong moves, but is it going to be enough? And is there enough time for them to ramp back up with a real personnel change, losing their second best attacker before the playoffs? I don't know, but those are all really good teams in the West. And then Miami, Cincy, and Columbus. Columbus and Miami, I think, are probably a bit above Cincinnati in terms of my estimations. After Cincy struggled to get a big name 9 over the line at the summer transfer window deadline in MLS. But man, any of those teams could win a trophy. You look at Red Bulls and NYCFC and Charlotte. I think those three teams from 4 to 6 in the Eastern Conference are all teams that truly nobody's going to want to play come the MLS Cup playoffs. So those are all real problems, and they're going to be real problems. It's been a blast watching sort of these teams go into this season and continue to improve and try to strengthen. If I had to pick an MLS Cup matchup right now, I'm real tempted to go back and pick exactly what we saw last year. Columbus Crew. This time they would probably end up traveling to LAFC, given the games that they had to go and deal with playing in CONCACAF Champions Cup, where they made it to the final and lost that game. But I mean, they're still not out of it in terms of home field advantage over basically everybody outside of Inter Miami right now, it seems. But I'm going to go Miami LAFC. I think LAFC are the strongest team in the West. They are my pick here. I think the Galaxy are the second strongest team right now. Could see it going either way, but I feel good about an LA team, certainly. And I'll go LAFC because I do think they're just that bit better. And then Miami, man, Messi has not been around, and this team's still been playing quite well as he recovers from that Copa America final injury. Miami are legit. They are really deep. They are talented. Their top end is clearly and obviously so much higher than any other team in this league. They are still the best team in MLS, or the team that I feel most confident winning a one-off game and really once you get past the first round of the playoffs, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, Yeah, like you said right there, I think any of these teams, a lot of these teams will be in the mix. I mean, there's still teams I think that are maybe outside the playoff spots that could maybe make a run. I mean, looking at Philly, we talked about Philly right now. They're still kind of outside of that playoff bubble. Could they make a run the second half of the season? Obviously, they've had a really good summer in the Leagues Cup. You just need kind of that momentum, that confidence to keep it going, and maybe a team like Philly in the East. Look at the West; it's a little bit tougher, right? I mean, you have the teams outside right now: Austin, Dallas, Kansas City. I mean, St. Louis. None of those teams are really kicking down the door for me anytime soon this season. But yeah, it'll be fun, man. I mean, hopefully we can connect up at MLS Cup again. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Maybe this time it'll be LAFC. I won't have part of my heart in it with Philly in it probably like 2 years ago, but we'll see. But Joe Lowery, can't thank you enough for jumping on, man. Really, really love reading your stuff. Mr. Worldwide, that's your new tag now. So live it up, man. Live it up. But
Let's go.
yeah, but thank you for joining the show. And obviously, the listeners can find you, Joe C. Lowery, on Twitter/X, and then they can find all your stuff. Backheeled, The Guardian, The Athletic, ESPN, MLS. Like I said, that list goes on and on.
Thank you so much for having me, Larry. Really appreciate it. You're crushing it. Keep up the great work. And I do definitely hope that we get to connect again in person soon.
Yeah, man, can't looking forward to it. So thanks again. And for everyone listening, thanks for listening to another episode of the Footy Daily. Please be sure to share with a fellow USMNT MLS fan on Spotify, and be on the lookout for a new episode next week. Thanks, guys.